Okay, well, is it stable?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
good.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, yay. Okay, good. I'm so glad. Finally, we got internet sorted out.
Now it'll be our turn. Now ours is going to go like,
You're gamers. I trust you have great internet.
and we don't have a Chris. We just have
Yeah.
Jonah.
Hi, Jonah.
Yeah, if you could give some background on Emotive, because I'm just the gamer. He's the scientist. I know nothing. Like, you got to lay it out for me in layman's terms, because I have no idea.
So Emotive is a company that uses neurotechnology to help decode and understand the brain in order to look at cognition, emotions, really try and help. Well, our overarching goal is to try and help people look after their brains over their lifetime, right? This is our most important asset, and we don't really do very much for it. Like we have rings, we have watches and stuff that actually helps us care for our physical health, but we kind of overlook the brain. So Emotive, our mission is to really try and create technologies that make it easy for everyone to look after their brains, but in the process, really understand how the brain functions first. That's the most important thing, because otherwise you can't do very much unless you can actually decode the signal. So that's what we start with first, the systems that allow us to measure the brain, and then we have systems that technology, software that actually interprets and then provides some feedback.
So is there different form factors that this comes in, or?
Lots of different form factors. As you can imagine, traditional EEG research has been around for about 100 years now. And so we started first with the hairnet. If you've seen people who have sleep challenges, they might have if you go in for a sleep study, you put a cap on, so that those have been around for a very long time. And that form factor, we also have one that's a 32-channel EEG system that allows you to do that sort of dense array, more elaborate research. But we also have a 14-channel system. That's our flagship product. And that's, the way that we think about that product is it allows you to measure the brain in the context of the real world. So your brain actually changes in the context in which you observe it. So if you think about traditional brain research, it's typically done in a hospital or a clinic or a lab, and that's quite an artificial environment. If you are trying to study kids in school, that's quite difficult to replicate that environment. So we created equipment that allows us to take brain measurement into the real world so that you can actually study the brain in context. So our 14-channel system really allows you to do that very well. It's very quick setup time. It's plastic in terms of the arms and things. So it makes it really, really easy for you to set up quickly. And then if you're studying lots of different people, imagine a cap, right? You've got to wash it after each person, dry it, and so that even if it's neoprene, it still takes time to dry, and so you're really it's quite slow. Whereas with a plastic mechanical design, you can actually wipe it down with an antimicrobial wipe, and then you're on to the next subject. So that really made a very big difference for large scale, in-world, real-world contextual neuroscience research. So that's our 14-channel product. We have a 5-channel system as well, which is kind of similar to that. It also looks at functionally all of the key parts of the brain, so around the cerebral cortex. And then we now also have a 2-channel system, which is designed for everyday use. And I think that's really, research is great, but at the end of the day, it's still very limited, right? I've been doing this for over a decade, and to be perfectly candid, I would wear the 14-channel system 20 minutes a week at most if I'm doing a study. But with our 2-channel system, I wear it all the time. I wore it this morning on the way into the office. I'm wearing it now while I'm talking to you. So I'm getting hours and hours of EEG that I typically wouldn't normally get because of just the simplicity of the design, the ease of use. And so I think that's where we can actually move this technology into everyday use to help everyone look after and care for their brain, and also opens up really fun opportunities to look at peak performance, how to actually enhance performance in very specific use cases as well.
So you're wearing it right now? Is it in your ear?
I'm wearing it right now.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't have known unless I told you.
Even Jonah's coming around. Like, he's so curious.
Chris.
Yeah, not Chris, but our Jonah, our version of Chris is coming around. He's peeking.
But it's really cool because, typically EEG systems make you look kind of awkward and weird, and no one wants, women, we don't really want to look weird. We want it to look nice and inobtrusive. And sometimes if I'm wearing the other systems, it messes up my hair. And so you got to get it through the hair. And so this is really nice. And one of the things that we love about this particular form factor is that it's an in-ear system. So it's the buds are actually sitting inside the ear itself, like this, right? And so what's really great about that is that typically with EEG research, we're contending with the skull. And so if you think about the skull, it's like a massive thick wall that protects, it's a protective layer over this most important asset, your brain, right? So we have a very thick skull that protects it. The problem is if you're trying to measure non-invasively, it has to travel through the skull. That tiny little electrical signal is traveling through that really thick protective layer. And so by the time we can measure it, it's super attenuated, very weak, the signal. And so it's hard to read, and then you've got a lot of noise on top of it. The nice thing about the in-ear location is that we actually don't have skull there. It's just it's kind of softer tissue, and so we can actually see much more clearly into what's going on in the brain. And because we've got the two channels, it's like a little window looking into your brain. Obviously, we can't. We're still a long ways from being able to do really great source localization with this two-channel system, but we'll get better over time with the decoders. And the thing that we have at Emotive is because we've worked with 5 channels, 14 and 32 channels, we have all of that data that allows us to shrink a lot of the models down to this form factor, which makes it work quite well, even though it's so inobtrusive.
So the data it's collecting.
I'm really excited about this form factor, as you can tell.
It's awesome.
Yeah. The data that it's collecting right now, is it just hooked up to an iPhone app or something? Like, how do you view all of it?
Yeah, so it's basically hooked up. So it's hooked up to my my phone. So it's just an Android or iOS app that you can just track your brain in real time. And so I can look at like my monthly.
Oh, okay.
Trends as well, so I can see what happened. I can have a look at what happened over the course of the year. So all of this is really quite helpful to be able to say, oh, so this is how my brain responds to different activities that I take on every single day. So if I'm stressed out, what are the things that triggers my stress? When should I actually take a break if my brain is overloaded? What's my stress balance? Stress is really, really debilitating. It's bad for you, but it's also, if it's chronic, but it's actually really, really good to help you focus and perform better. So my stress is at an optimal level at the moment. So it doesn't go into the red zone. Yeah. And so the stress balance, the balance between positive versus negative stress is what we track, because we know that you have to actually have some cognitive load, cognitive stress in order to perform well. Otherwise, everything is just like, well, I don't really care. You're not really paying super, you're not alert and paying attention, but being able to really try and find that sweet spot where you're always staying above the line, so to speak. We also track things like mental activity. So this is where I'm really trying to work hard on. So mental activity is essentially, think of it like a step counter, but for your brain, right? Our brain, it's the most advanced learning system that we have. And what it needs is more and more challenge, right? We get very lazy, unfortunately, as we become adults. So when you look at a child, they're learning all the time. Everything's new. And so that's really great for your brain. They are also lucky because they're in the learning phase. They can learn by osmosis, not like us adult brains. But nevertheless, as we get older, what we find is that we typically don't do a lot of diverse, challenging activities that really forces our brain to learn new skills. And that's actually not good for our long-term brain health, right? So to kind of maintain cognitive fitness, you need to use your brain in ways that challenges it. And so I track mental activity as well, because that's how much effort you're actually putting in to the work. So some days, if I'm just meeting with my team, I will have very low mental effort, right? It's just, I'm not doing a lot of focused activity where I'm doing problem solving or thinking through problems and things like that. And that can be easy it's not taxing on your brain, but that's not really good. So I try to introduce new things in my general daily life that actually helps me increase that mental activity a little bit more. So that's not easy, I have to admit, as an adult. So, as a mom spending time with my little girl, that's not really going to take a lot of mental effort. It's emotional time, and that's really healthy for the brain, but it's not actually really doing problem solving, analytical work. So try and carve out time during my day to try and work on hard things in order to kind of keep that level of mental activity up. And then on the weekends, I try to learn a new piece on the piano, or try and follow my kids' learning of Chinese, that I try to exercise my brain a little bit more, because otherwise, it's very difficult to get that mental exercise up. I notice with my team, though, there are a lot of coders, and their mental activity is really good. So they actually are spending a lot of time cocooned into real focus work. And so their results are much better than folks who are in the management role, where, you're essentially directing work and you're checking in on progress of work, but you're not doing as much of the heavy lifting yourself. And that actually is not so good for mental activity. So that's really good. I get an objective measurement, so I know exactly if it's good or otherwise. And then we also have a general score, which is a cognitive fitness score. And it's really fun to actually have this objective metrics that I don't have to really track. I don't have to worry about it. I just know that if I'm using my device, I can have all of these metrics.
So how long would you have to wear it every day for in the accurate reading? Is it something that's all the time?
Every day, if you have about 10 minutes, it will update all your metrics. So
okay.
Resting and general baseline state throughout your day. So you don't need a very long time to just kind of update your metrics. So it recalibrates in terms of, because your brain will shift day to day. And so we can actually see how it's changing. And we have a few activities that you can do that allows you to quickly calibrate where you are and how your brain's changed over time. So you could do some tasks around memory, around focus, etc., which can be quite short. But if you want to use it as a tracker, then it's really just integrate it into your normal workflow. And we're about to release a desktop app as well, which then you can let it run in the background, and then you can actually do both.
Cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think it's a good segue into that's a lot of great information about, kind of how it works, what it's kind of trying to pay attention to, and what you can do that from a listening perspective. But what also I think is really interesting is the stuff that we've talked about previously, and that you've been diving into, before, but also even more so in the future, of how can that also, those signals, be a control mechanism for other things,
control mechanism.
Yeah.
You just hours again, and I'm on the way in to drop off my kid at school. She's trying to move my coffee cup with her mind, and I thought that was exactly me when I watched Star Wars.
Exactly, yeah. Lightsaber.
Exactly. Who doesn't, right? And so when I first started this company, one of the very first things that we wanted to do was to figure out if we can use it as a controller. And with our 14-channel system, we have really, really phenomenal examples where, you can drive, Rodrigo, who was paralyzed from the neck down as a result of a carjacking incident in Brazil. He was able to drive an F1 car around a racetrack using his mind, right? So there's no pedals, no steering wheel. He's just using the mind control and the features that we have with our 14-channel system to essentially go forward, turn left, turn right, and stop. So those are still relatively simple commands in terms of the dimensionality that's available, but you can actually do that. Similarly, we have a Twitch streamer that's played Elden Ring, right? Which is amazing. I don't know how she does it, because that game's hard to begin with.
I suck at it with my hands.
Yeah, exactly. And she was able to win using the mind controller, which is really, really crazy. We're not thinking about integrating with full-blown, really hardcore games like that for the 2-channel system. But what we have started to do is we started to create this environment we call Emotive Play, that has a lot of smaller games that you can control and experience using your mind as a controller. So the first one that we shared at CES just a few weeks ago is a game called Hearts and Heal, and it's really, really fun. The idea, it is a very simple mechanic for you guys who are gamers, but the idea is that this village has been destroyed because of negative thoughts. And what you can do is you train to basically grow and expand a heart. So just think of it like pulling a heart and making it bigger. As an action, and then when you think that, you can actually heal the kid. So you grow your heart, and then you heal the kid, and over time you can heal the kid. And when you heal the kid, you can actually heal the world as well. And so it's a very simple mechanic, but it's really fun. The next game that we've got is called Mind Defenders, which is a bit more hardcore. It's think of it like Plants vs Zombies, but you have to grow and hatch the character with your mind in order to then defeat the incoming
horde of enemies. Yeah.
When I first played it, I said to the game creator that, look, it's too I said to Brian, hey, I think it's too hard. It's too hardcore. But after playing it a few times, I'm like, oh, I get it now. I'm winning now. So it doesn't matter. That's good enough for me. But at the very beginning, it was really challenging because they were coming too fast. So we will add some leveling to make it easier. So it's not, you don't throw yourself in at level 5 right away. So we will add some leveling into that. But the idea with Emotive Play is to be able to create a series of games that make brain control fun, but also make it really engaging for users as well. And it's always fun to move things with your mind.
For sure. I mean, Elden Ring is one of the most hardcore games.
I literally can't do it with my hands.
It's like notoriously difficult, hardcore difficulty game. To be able to use, the brain as a controller is pretty cool. It always reminds me of, we mentioned Star Wars, but what was it, Back to the Future 2, right? When like Marty goes in the little cafe and he sees the crack shot, like arcade game with the guns, and the little kid's like, you have to use your hands? That's a baby's toy.
Right. Well, the Back to the Future, they thought we would have flying cars by now.
Yeah. I'd be happy with the flying skateboard. We don't even know.
I know that hoverboard was very cool.
What does it feel like when you're saying, okay, you're controlling it with your mind? I'm thinking about it. How does that work? Because
your eyebrow.
What is what does it feel like, or what do you do?
Very strange. It's not like a button press, right? Yeah. So it is definitely a new skill. So think about the way it works is that your brain's always emitting electrical signals all the time because your brain's always active. What we do is we take a baseline state, which is a neutral state of you not actually trying to move anything with your mind, just hanging out, being yourself. We take a very short 8-second neutral state. And then we say, now, try and imagine growing this heart, for example, or moving a cube or whatever that might be. And then you basically think that thought, and the patterns that are emitted by your brain during that exact thought is captured in order to create a specific machine learning pattern recognition system to identify those same patterns again. So when you think the same thing, it basically is used as a
okay. So that's how you calibrate it.
It's very flexible. The problem is it requires you to have a very clear and distinctive idea in your mind.
Yeah.
And it also requires the system to be able to quickly create a very narrow set of patterns that is related to this activity, right? So it's essentially real time creating a smaller algorithm for you that detects how you think about this particular activity. And then every time you think it actually performs the action. Now, if you have a very muddled thought, so in our core APIs SDK, we actually show you how far your neutral state is versus your action state. And so for the Twitch streamer Perry, you could see that her actions are so her neutrals here and her action states are very far apart.
Yeah.
They're in different quadrants of the space, and they're very far apart. When they're so far apart, it means that you can really robustly get to a very specific state, and they're so distinct that you're less likely to have false positive and false negatives, right? Yeah. If you have two action states that happen to be very similar, so if you're a newbie to this and you think of neutral and then you think of action and it's kind of there, two that's very, very close to each other, it's going to be quite difficult to discern. And so what will happen is you'll have lots of false positives or false negatives, right? You'll try and make it happen and it's not going to work, or it's just going to think that you're trying to push something when you're not.
Yeah.
What you try to do then is to try and give it another example. And over time, by giving it more and more examples, you will pull the two actions away, and then you'll have a much more robust signal. So one of the nice things about the emotive play environment is we're creating a set of environments where it's really easy for an individual to start to build that mental profile. And then over time, once you've got a really good set of commands, you could use it for anything, right? Because it's your set of mental commands. So then you can connect it to an IoT, maybe control lights. But the first thing is, how do you actually build a set of really repeatable brain-computer interface-based commands, which is not like a button press, right? It is a very specific idea in your mind about how you think about this action.
But that's incredibly clever in how of like the way that other, devices that have tried to do BCI commands, I think they've historically approached it in somewhat different ways where they tell you specifically, like, think of A or B, and you're only getting a couple of degrees of freedom. They're like, you can do, it's a classification problem of like, they're thinking about this or that. And kind of that's it, right? And to be able to visualize even that feedback, like thinking as a consumer or someone using the device, being able to visualize that relationship between in this space, how far or kind of where am I?
Like Perry, who's a very good BCI gamer, she's asked us to give her 12, right? Actions, because she thinks she can train them distinctly herself. So we're going to have to add some advanced features, because for a normal person, our system allows you to do 4 at a time, but you've got to open up another BCI instance to then do another 4. But Perry's like, look, I think I could get many, many more. And so you're absolutely right, Wayne, that with this sort of system, because of its flexibility, it's really up to the individual to be able to have very distinct ideas in their mind. And so you can create a canvas of a lot more mental commands. The challenge is, how much time will it take you to train up that command, and how quickly can you get back into the system and control it? But if you've got a really engaging mechanic, like a game where people actually enjoy getting back into it, then you can do that. If it's just an arbitrary, non-engaging thing, it's very hard, because what we find is the hardest thing is to change behavior in the first place, right? So, and getting people back into the environment. So I think the game's mechanic is something we're trying to learn from, because it is truly engaging and interactive. It has level characteristics built into it, and so you can actually build this sort of persistent set of commands that you as an individual can use, and then you can kind of port it your profile. You could use it anywhere, and that's what makes it very powerful once you can do that.
Your own skill tree, and like learning and
exactly.
You're like layering up different abilities that you can put in your little toolbar of like, oh, okay, now instead of just having 2-3 commands, I have 12 or something like that. That's pretty cool. It makes me think, like, what also excites me, I think, just as a player then, is my mind immediately goes to all the interesting things you can do in the other direction of like creating even new game genres that maybe that don't exist today or aren't as compelling in a controller type stimulus environment, that like if you're controlling it with kind of mind controller and depending on what you're thinking about, having some sort of a richer stimulus and mental interaction between like visual, auditory, all of that stuff together, there's probably some really crazy and interesting things.
I mean, look at the in Star Wars is a really good metaphor. The action is really simple, right? It's really just 2 force players, right? Two people that have command of this skill, and if you even a kind of a basic tug of war becomes very, very fun, because it's a mental duel compared to a button pressing phenomenon, which is really the things that you can control is time and things like that, right? Precision and accuracy. But this is quite different. It's a completely different dynamic. The other piece is that you can actually also introduce emotions into gameplay as well, which I think is very, very interesting as another dimension. So, being able to change the ambient environment based on how the player feels. So if you are feeling anxious, introduce a heartbeat or something like that would be really fun, because it feels much more connected to you. It's not superficial anymore. It's like, oh, this way. Or if you're not scared, dial it up a little bit, because that dynamic is really hard to work on. Because I know when I play, if I'm playing on a level that is not right for me, it's just too hard, and I just want to stop. Right? But for some other folks, if it's too easy, it's not fun for them. So it's getting that right is not easy.
Like esports, we need it for like tilt detection for matchmaking. Right, where it's like, okay, I've lost 5 in a row.
Your game that shuts off.
Is that before you throw the controller? Or okay, you're gonna go down. Well, let's put you down a rank or something like that till we can get you into a state where you're not going to. Like, I think of even player retention for games, where if I get frustrated because I lost 2-3 in a row in Rivals right now because I had players that were throwing. Maybe I should, automatically the game should put some more effort into matching me with some other people so that like my tilt and frustration meter goes in the other direction, and I want to keep playing, enjoying Rivals instead of being like, never mind, I'm going back to Overwatch 2 or something like that. Would be super interesting.
It's funny because you can actually see that tilt moment in your attention level, right? It completely just drops. So we have what we call, they're more cognitive assessments, but they look like a games. But if you are, let's say you're trying to play something that has essentially kill a foe or not kill a foe, right? It's very simple. It's looking at reaction time and impulsivity. Like, are you just killing everybody, or are you able to discern the difference? The funny thing is, as it gets progressively harder, if you can see that moment where people are really paying attention, so they've got high attention, but once it gets overwhelming, their attention basically drops. And that's kind of the equivalent of that tilt moment where they just give up. Their attentional networks just disengage, and they no longer care about whether they win or lose, because it's just done. They've lost you've lost their ability to engage and pay attention at that point. And then you have to kind of re-engage them. And then they're like, okay, I'll try again, right? And I can see that every single time when it gets too hard, there's that very distinct drop. It's like high, and then it drops all the way down. It's very, very interesting that you can actually measure that down to the milliseconds as to when that actually happened.
That's the stuff that I think, and you kind of hinted at, and even talked directly about in the beginning, of just like the ecological validity of the research we do in the lab, right? So when you study something, like I studied attention, visual attention, and memory, and we'd bring undergraduate students in that would sit and do a study or something, and it's like, are they really paying attention in the way that we're operationalizing it, or are they just doing it because they get college credit or something? Or some cookies, or whatever, and they're just like, okay, so we're doing these things where we think we're measuring attention, but we're really not, or they're not that highly engaged. Whereas if you can do things in, like you mentioned, the brain is just an enormous context machine. Like, context is such an important modulator of even how we recall memories and how we react in terms of pattern matching, that if you can collect data in that state and kind of at scale, if it's as simple as people can put in earbuds, maybe it's 2 channels now, and in 10 years it's 30. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, it opens up what we'll learn about the brain and so many things, I think, that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I see a very natural synergy between what we do and gaming, because it's the one environment where you can actually have a closed loop system, right? You can really look at the stimuli and the behavioral and cognitive response, and it's all time marked. So it's very, very easy to then understand the correlates, right? The neural correlates for different cognitive and emotional behaviors and decisions and actions, right? And so it's really interesting. And Wayne, you and I have talked about this a number of times. This is a really exciting area, because a lot of research now on the real world, as we look at AI and this explosion of real world contextual AI, it's very expensive. Right? It's expensive to instrument our world. And the one thing that we're trying to understand is, how does the human actually respond in this physical and digital world? And the digital world is a very, very good place to start, because it creates this closed loop environment where we can actually have that true interaction. And then we can then apply some of those learnings towards the real physical world. But that built environment that we live in it's going to take us some time and a huge amount of infrastructural changes and costs to really fully instrument it in the way that we will be able to seamlessly, walk in and just like the science fiction movies, right? You walk in, lights changes based on your mood, etc. That will take some time. We've got lights and light bulbs now that is connected to IoT, and we will eventually get there. But if we can actually look at, what are the specific preferences that people have within a digital environment, that's a much easier, low-hanging fruit place to start to really decode and understand.
Other direction, like I don't know if you read "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," like the book, right? That what Blade Runner was based off, but they have in the beginning. I forget what it's called now. It'll come to me. The Penfield mood organ, right? Which is the idea of just like, well, what mood do you want to be in?
Yeah.
And you
just
like
turn
it to that, and you're just like, now I feel grateful.
That, right?
Now I feel.
Cool. I love that. And you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why we really like this form factor, having the audio and microphone as well, is that you can use audio and sound as a way to nudge someone into a particular mood. Yeah. And that's really, really valuable, right? Can you nudge someone into a mood where they can actually stay cocooned in a longer focus state so that they can stay productive for longer? Or can you nudge someone into a much more relaxing state that can actually then help them get to sleep faster, right? So there are a lot of things that you can do with this sort of feedback loop, and music is a phenomenal mechanism that is underutilized at the moment.
It's one of my favorite YouTube videos ever. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to show it to you as soon as we're done.
Yeah.
But where they have, the older gentlemen, they're in kind of a home, and it's like that like retirement home or facility got like iPod shuffles, like the smaller iPods, right? And they're going and showing this gentleman who's pretty like no affect, not moving, just kind of hunched over, really not even responding to things, interacting. And they put the headphones on him and play music from him when he was younger, right? And you just see him come alive. I mean, his eyes, but he turns into a different person because you've like rolled into a different state from the stimulus of that music that's so programmed into the memories of his brain. And he comes. You just see it. I mean, it's one of the my favorite YouTube video ever.
That's so wonderful.
You could just take these other stimuli and combine them to get.
So true. Yeah. That is absolutely right. Oh, I think my video is kind of.
Oh, there you go.
I have a similar story where I'm the Hunchback of Notre Dame is my nickname, because I tend to punch over like this sometimes, and my posture is really good. The minute I sit on the piano, I'm straight, because that was how I learned, right? It was drummed into me. So every time I sit on the piano, I'm sitting up very upright, and my posture is completely different. But music is a really phenomenal thing. I've seen that with nursing homes. So same thing with my grandma was much older. She was in her 90s, but there was a lady who was in the same nursing home with her, and every time her husband came, the one mechanism he used to bring her back to the time they were together is music, and it's incredible. I'd love to see that video.
I will share it immediately. I'll share it for everyone. I'll put Jonah, I'm doing one of these things, so you remember to blink here after we edit. We'll do this.
That's a beautiful
it's
idea.
So I mean, it just
powerful.
It does nothing but bring joy to you, and again shows like what we can do with technology, even in simple terms. Again, it's not like they didn't have to drill inside his skull and press a button of tissue or anything. It was something as simple as music, and the appropriate music to trigger a memory that, I mean, it's night and day. It was night, and it was like button on, off. It was amazing.
There are sensory inputs like that, right? Music's one, and the olfactory networks is another.
Yeah, smell.
So how your brain responds to smell can bring you back very quickly to a time and place, right? So you mentioned you went to Vietnam. I'm sure if you ate something or smelt something, it can bring you back. There was a smell I remember from when I was a teenager that smelled like Hong Kong, right? That was my very first trip out of Australia. And when I smell it, it just brings me right back to that time. It's really amazing how the olfactory senses can do that for you as well, similarly to music.
It does that for me with like cinnamon, like Christmas smells, like the end of year, like winter, where there's like that. I'm just suddenly in like a perk up, I'm in a good mood. Yeah, and then the other one, if I even catch a slight whiff of Popeye's chicken, if I'm even driving by, it's over. I can't resist. I'm done. That's it.
Can't
That's over.
resist.
It's got me.
It's true. That's how they get us.
It's that powerful for me. Yeah.
I had one question about the 2 channel. So we recently just talked to a coach for Sentinels. He's the Valorant coach.
Chaplain.
Yes.
And he was talking about pre-game. They're all sitting at the Riot Arena, and he's trying to amp them up, but he doesn't know if he should. And he doesn't know what kind of mental state they're in. Does this person need it's okay, like whatever happens, you're good? Does this person need wake up, let's get in there or whatever, right? Is that something that your devices would be able to share with a coach of a
You'll
team?
be able to see in real time where they're at, right? What level of anxiety. So you'll be able to see that spider map of essentially where their brain state is in the moment. And that can be very, very helpful just to get an insight, because some people are just stone-faced, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Some people like to wear their emotions on their sleeve, but others are impossible to read.
Yeah.
And you can actually, so my co-founder's like that. He doesn't, as a happy Jeff is like that.
Yeah.
Like that. So it's exactly the same thing. But the brain measurement is fantastic. I get an insight into what's going on in his mind. And so absolutely, it could be very helpful.
So you can share that data with someone?
Yes. So if the individual is prepared to share it, then yes. So they would have to be willing to share it. But let's say, for example, Jeff said, I'll show you what was going on, then I'll see. And I'm like, oh, okay.
There we go.
So if the player doesn't really want to share it with the coach, then it's harder. But if the player is like, yes, I want to work as a team, we should, I want to have this insight, I want to really be my best self, and I want you to be able to get the best out of me before as we prepare, then yes, they'll be able to see it.
Well, I wonder if there's so you look at your 5 players and you see how they are. I wonder if you can start to identify, even at practice, these were the mental states of everyone. Yeah. This was our best practice.
Yeah. When this is the interaction, and this was the stage for sure.
Oh yeah, I'll have to share some videos after this as well of some of the stuff that we've done with athletes, because yes, you can actually see in real time what's going on in their brain, and so yes, you can identify which mental states performed best, and then you can actually train to repeat that more regularly so that the team essentially is able to go into that zone. Okay. Because you can measure it, right? So you know exactly this is the optimal state, and so how do I train and practice to be able to get back into that state very, very quickly and effortlessly.
Okay, well, esports organizations, if you're watching this, you better buy those devices, okay?
Yeah. I mean, it also again, to bring it back to what Matt from 1HP was saying and him working with Maddie, right? Was they were like, hey, they were trying to decrease the amount of time it took to warm up to get into a peak state of mechanical skill to then go play. And they were going to physical exercises and things like that. How do we measure this? What is this? And if you don't do this, maybe it takes 30 minutes. If you do this, maybe it takes 15. But even then it was well, what measurements do we use so that we can get some proxy of that? And I mean, this also sounds like a great tool for that as well, where if you have that kind of measurement, and again, that being just something you can just stick in your ear and is frictionless, is easy, seems like a no-brainer. Dad joke. My kids will be proud.
That's funny. Love it. No, absolutely. I think that these are insights that you otherwise wouldn't be able to have. And we use physical correlates as a way to try and see how we can improve our game. But the whole system works cohesively together. And we know, especially in high-performance sports, the mental states is so vital to how you actually play, because it's how you deal with stress, it's how do you deal with emotional regulation, it's how well you sustain attention and focus and block out distractions right in that moment. And so you can actually train that if you actually have insight into what's going on.
Okay, that's really cool.
And what you mentioned there, I think too, that builds on that is again context, where and it is kind of hard to practice that. And I think that you're right, the digital world gives us an ability to cheaply, and we talked about this with Kaplan as well.
Yeah.
When we were talking about like the memories we form playing games and how strong those are and the social bonds, you know, even 20 years later, it's because the brain doesn't really care about reality. Like that is a real experience and kind of is a real thing. When I was in grad school, we did a study where I had collaborated with some friends that had done like looking at stress and fear conditioning and stress and fear acquisition and then extinction. And they were trying to replicate studies that were done in rodents where, okay, if you put a rodent in this particular environment and you shock them, you take away the shocks, you put them in that environment, they still have that same like visceral physiological response of fear, or you put them in a different one and can you extinguish that? And when they were trying to do it with humans, they were having trouble replicating that when they would go, okay, we're going to put you in this room and then we're going to put you in that room. And they're like, sometimes we have to go, the only time we get an effect is if we go to another building.
Yeah.
We'll see it in building to building.
Yeah.
So what we did at the time, and this was, I don't know, this was when virtual reality was still making everybody sick. It was like DK2 era Oculus.
Yeah.
We were like, they came to me because I was just the nerd game guy. And like, Wayne, could you make like VR? Could we do this in VR and create these experiences? And it worked. It worked beautifully where no longer are we taking them physically from different rooms, but those results from the rodent studies of, yes, the context changed enough for me to have these associative memories was just as strong in a virtual environment and even stronger than, and to your point, we could measure all of the physics and stimulus of that virtual world in real time and match that to any of the biological signals that we're measuring, which is so hard to control in the real world.
So that's the value of a really deeply immersive virtual world, is that you can actually have a very powerful simulated environment that is very close to real life, because the brain gets tricked into believing that it is real after a few minutes, right? You suspend your disbelief and you're truly immersed in that world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Wow, you did that. What year was that, Wayne?
I think we published it in maybe 2016, 2017. I'll do another Jonah thing of like, here, put the citation in here. We'll link to the paper. Yeah, I'll share that as well. It was super cool to see, again, just the power of, you know, I think a lot of times we think of, we need some crazy, like a pill or some like intracranial intervention.
I know, but the pill, all of the side effects of that, same thing as once you've put it in.
Yeah, when often you can get power.
Quite a lot of work to get it out.
For sure, and it doesn't do it without damage of, you know, surrounding things. When things just like even stimuli or like these other tools that we have, virtual reality, music, all of these things can have really strong impacts. And now, you know, with this being able to have tools of how to measure that in the real world is tremendous. And what's the old like management, you know, what you manage, what you measure or whatever thing, right? Like it's true. I think we see that with, I mean, I do it. My watch will be like, hey, idiot, it's time to stand up. Like, and I'm like, oh, crap. You know, and then I'm like,
I'll do that now.
Yeah, I'm close to 10,000 steps. All right, let me get up and go walk around. Like it really does. And that probably has a non-marginal effect.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. We've got to start measuring our brains, because there's no point living to 100 without your brain intact, right? Well, there is no point. And I have a little one, so I really care about making sure I'm cognitively intact and physically intact, hopefully to 100, because I do want to see more of her life.
Yes.
Yep, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I know we probably went over. We did go over on time. Sorry.
No worries at all. Though I was late, so thank you so much. This was really fun.
It was super
thank
fun.
you.
We should do a part 2 or something like that.
I mean, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. I feel like we barely scratched the surface.
With you guys wearing the earbuds, and then we chat about all your metrics.
Oh, we should do that. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
100%.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That would be really fun.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for including me in the podcast. It's always fun chatting with you, Wayne.
Yeah, same.
And it's so lovely to meet you.
Yeah,
Julie.
nice to meet you.
When I'm in Calgary.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Bye.